Welcome back to the SNHU weekly podcast. My name is Giovanni. I am a freshman at Southern New Hampshire University online. I am majoring in cybersecurity with a focus in data science. Today, we're going to review week 7 and 8 of IT-145, which is Foundation of App Development. So first, before we get started, let's go ahead and dive into the grade recap first for week 6 and where we are on the grade side of things, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of today's podcast. So, where I stand right now, 679 out of 730 points for this class. That brings me, of course, to an A in this class. And then some feedback I got on last week's work. I got an A, and of course, inside of my Zybook labs. And of course, we had a major project that was due. It was about 40 points. The instructor said, great work. You successfully squashed all the bugs in the code. Keep up the good work. So received an A in that. So let's move on to what we're expecting in week 7. And of course, we'll talk about week 8 as well. So week 7, what you can expect in week 7 is one major project. So make sure that you are well prepared for this project. And I'll go through some things I think that you should focus on in that particular area. And then we're going to talk about your Zybooks and one thing that could easily get overlooked, which is your Java API documentation. All right, module 7. Here is what I feel should be your breakdown. And I think that if you focus on this, you will be able to get your week's work done really quickly. So my suggestion, start with your Zybook stuff first, okay? For week 7 does not have that many things for far as the work that you need to do. There's no challenges, there's no Zy labs at all for this. So all you need to do is just go through and do the participation. You'll get the full credit for that. Far as the grades for the full credit for participation is only 25. So get this done. This should only take you roughly about an hour, if that long. It took me like 25 minutes, but I'm giving you up to an hour to be able to go through and do it. Now, let's talk about the next aspect, which is your project to submission. Okay, that is going to be the bulk of what you need to focus in on. That should take you roughly about 3 to 10 hours in your week. So plan accordingly. Make sure that once you get the files, there's really only 2 files that you're going to need to really focus on. The documentation goes through and it tells you 2 of the files, just leave them alone. But when you get ready to download the zip file, you're going to take that zip file, leave the 2 first files alone. The second and third file, make sure that you edit those and it'll go through the directions and goes into detail. Again, this will take you roughly about 10 hours. So make sure that you plan accordingly for that. If you're going to do this throughout the week, just separate it out. You should be able to have this done so you have your Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. If you're going to wait until Sunday to do this, just block out about 10 hours because you're going to need to write quite a few lines of code. It's just taking the code we've already done and you're going to mod that code. But for right now, just make sure you focus on that. There's one thing I want to make sure that you don't overlook is assignment 7.3, which is using Java API documentation. That's going to take you about 1 to 3 hours. So if you wait until Sunday to do this work, you're going to have to, of course, add that 3 hours on. So this is 13 hours out of your Sunday that you would have to do to write this. Don't do that. Split it up into several dates throughout the week, and then you won't have an issue with it. By the time your Saturday, Sunday comes, you'll be free. Watch football, do whatever you need to do. But my suggestion to you, get this project done. This will be your third option in the week. So again, to recap, finish out your Zybook stuff first. Try to get that done early on in the week. Shouldn't take you that long, about 1 hour. Second thing, the major project 2 submission. That one is the bulk of your grade. Okay, so you're talking about 140 points, I believe, but let me clarify, 150 points. So you're talking about 150 points for this project for total. And now using the Java API documentation, that's the third part. Not as many, it's not as heavily weighted for that's only 40 points. But again, just make sure that you get it done. All of these things together all should take you roughly about 15 hours in a week. All right, so let's move on to module 8. And this one is going to be pretty easy. So This one is just a discussion post. So it is a reflective discussion post. Try to make this discussion post focus around 500 to 700 words. And the reason why is because if the instructor is going to be reading this documentation, you want him to be able to focus in on what you have to say, not necessarily just that you wrote an answer. For example, you're asked a question, go through and tell me what you learned from this specific project, is not what did you learn from the class. So make sure that you actually put some time into writing the response to this. Final thing is you just have your participation activities for 8. It's not really that many, so you don't have to worry about a lot in 8 as well. There are no Xylabs and there's no challenges. It's just participation. You can get those done. Roughly should take you about maybe an hour, if that long. I'm being generous there. But other than that, fellas, that should be all that you need to focus on for this week. I just given you 7 and 8. I am transitioning to the next set of classes. So I'll be going into HUM, or Humanities 100, which is Perspectives in Humanities, to round out the rest of my education. So if you fellas have any questions or anything that you need, so that's this week's work. So thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast and hang out with me as I document my journey going through SNHU and everything that I've had to do so far on the online course. If there is anything in the video or the podcast that has helped you in any way, please just drop a simple like. It does help the algorithm to know that my information is beneficial to someone who might be going through cybersecurity as well. And I'll check you guys out next week.